Yeah, wanna yeah, wanna know yeah.
Hello, this is Ryan Riccitelli with asnews.net and the Kiteboarder magazine, and this is show number 80. And tonight we have a special guest, Sander Nauenberg from Surftech, and he's calling in from Santa Cruz, California, from the Surftech office over there. And so, Sander, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, no, just working for Surftech here in the marketing, but we're a real small company, so we get to be involved in everything. Everyone here, pretty much the company really comes from a pretty core surf background, but, as this show will progress, we're super into getting really into the kiteboard side of the sport, the kiteboard side, and getting really involved on products and also utilizing our existing stuff, so super stoked to be on the show.
Well, I know that a lot of kite surfers who are, they speak very highly of your boards, and you guys have been around since day one with the Tough Light technology and just creating killer surfboards for people to surf on. And so I have like a laundry list of questions to ask you. So we'll just start off with the first one. And the only suggestion I can say is the lounge is telling me if you can, just try and speak up so that they can hear you. But anyway, it says many kiteboarders don't necessarily have surf backgrounds and aren't familiar with Surftech. Tell us a bit about Randy French, your founder, and how Surftech started out.
Well, Randy French, there's a long history. He started out as a surfboard shaper. He then really started getting really involved on the windsurf side. A lot of people know him from the windsurf side. He had Sea Trends, which was a really, really popular windsurf board company. He started Tough Light back in the early 90s, basically, is when he kind of started getting publicity about it. And the whole approach to it was he really recognized that there was another, arguably, we'd argue, really improved means of building surfboards out of really a different construction method completely, a really technical construction method. Went down that road, but what's really unique about the approach was the surf community is very dedicated to the shapers, who are really the core of our sport. They're the ones who continually advance design, and surfboard design is, that's where everything kind of flows from. That's why guys are doing moves and turns and getting different places on waves that they've never gotten before, is because how far shaping's come. And so the approach Randy took was to basically share this new technology and work along with shapers on developing their basically most desired shapes in what is, what's known as Tough Light technology, and now we're also doing it in some other different technologies like TL2.
Surftech, basically has relationships with various shapers who use your board technology. Tell us a bit about these relationships and how your company chooses what shapers to work with.
Well, that's been a changing thing too. Obviously, at the very beginning, the company was going out and seeking out shapers and trying to educate them about what we were doing and convince them that there was a reason for it. Now we're over 60 shapers who are involved with us, who are basically our partners. It's quite the opposite, and all these guys who we work with are really, really the top shapers in the world. These are the guys who, in their respective areas or in their respective kind of niches of surfboard design, are really well regarded. The top longboarder shapers, the top shortboard shapers. We got some of the most recognized guys involved on the stand-up paddle boards, and each one has an individual relationship with us. They're all slightly different. It really varies depending on their personalities. Some of them are talking to us regularly. Some we talk to intermittently, but it's a constantly evolving kind of deal. And we're all, and we're still constantly evolving the partners we have with new guys, different guys coming in. But now I'd have to say it's a lot harder because as we've grown. We really want to make sure we're only working with the best, and all the guys that we work with currently, we really confidently feel are at the top echelon in the shaping community. So, yeah, that's we're really stoked on all the guys, especially the guys from the very beginning who at the time were taking a chance because people didn't know as much about what we were doing. A lot of those guys were, as I said, taking a chance, and we're just super grateful because I think it's been proven to be really a great success for everybody.
Well, in Surftech boards, you use 3 different technologies: wood veneer, Tough Light, and TL2. Tell us about the construction and performance differences between the different types of construction.
So at the basis of all those technologies is what is the foam core, the molded foam core that we call Tech Light, which is our own fused cell EPS core. Not to get too technical, but when we say fused cell, that basically means all the beads of foam, there's no spaces in between them, so there's no place for water to get into, which means all that foam core of our board is waterproof, which was it's a huge change from previous foams. So we have this waterproof foam core, and then with all the constructions, what we basically have is a sandwich layer, multiple layers that create a sandwich that goes around the rail and surface of the board. In example, in Tough Light, we vacuum bag on a layer of glass and epoxy resin, as well as an outer layer of high-density foam, vacuum and mold it onto the original core, which is the original shape, wrapping it around the rails in the process. And then after that, we put a secondary layer of epoxy and glass. So what you end up is, basically, if you can envision, a sandwich of epoxy and glass, high-density foam and epoxy and glass, wrapping the whole board, including wrapping around the rail, which creates just an incredibly light and incredibly strong board. Really similar construction method with TL2. The big difference is in that outer layer of foam. That high-density foam is different in TL2, which really defines the difference in the flex characteristics of both boards. They have a different feeling to them based on that outer high-density foam layer that we use. Wood veneer is very similar, except instead of using this high-density foam on the outside, we use a wood veneer that we get, and then the outside layer outside the wood doesn't have the same amount of glass on top. Mostly for longboards, they're already really strong, and so it's not really necessary. Except we do it on a few different models in the wood veneer for guys. There's a certain niche of surfers who actually want really heavy boards, so we offer that to that kind of. It's a pretty small group of guys, but they desire a really heavy board, which is kind of counterintuitive to what most surfers want in their boards.
Well, there's already a question coming in, and who are some of the shapers that you have that you work with?
Oh man, that's a pretty long list. I'm going to mostly focus on the shortboard guys because they're really the ones who are developing the boards that are probably that are most relevant to kite surfing. Guys from Rawson and Stretch are probably most recognized in the kite surf world. But also, got big surfboard companies such as Channel Islands and Rusty, JC. The list goes on. We have about 30 guys who offered their shapes in shortboard in a range of different shortboard sizes, as well as Randy French, who is also continues to be a shaper. So. I'm probably not going to list them all.
I understand. They can go to your website.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is our whole program is about offering a huge diversity of shapes and designs, and that's why we're always focused on working with the best shapers because there's constant evolution. I mean, these guys are at the forefront of it. Recently Stretch has gone and has been pushing hard on those quad designs. He's got there's a lot of guys doing quad designs right now, but Stretch is really recognized as one of the guys who really got it on the forefront, and that's recent, That was last year. It was a huge change in how people were thinking about design.
Well, here's another question. How are the Surftech epoxy boards different from other epoxy boards?
I mean, this is a sandwich construction. I mean, it's a totally different method of building boards. Basically, a standard custom board is generally has a wood stringer down the middle and is just a light foam. Whether it's an epoxy board or a poly board, they're using a foam and glassing over it. Whereas in the way we build our boards, it's not being shaped the way a shaper would in a shop. It's being molded off of a master design that shaper's provided, and then, as I discussed before, these layers are being added to the initial mold to basically provide all the strength and flex characteristics and kind of unique feel of our boards.
Well, and how did Surftech get involved in kite surfing?
You know what? We got dragged in. And I say that humorously, but the reality is that I think somewhat between some of the past relationships that Randy had in the windsurf world and the crossover guys who were also surfing and kite surfing, we started getting approached by professional athletes. Really, the guys who first approached us were it was Jeff Tobias and Ben Wilson, Martin Vari, and Mauricio. We're all kind of in a group, really, pushing each other. They would start, slowly coming to us saying, "Hey, can we try out a couple boards?" They'd try them, they'd give us feedback, and basically the feedback was, "Hey, can you give us some more boards?" Really, I mean, those guys were just super excited about the equipment. This was actually even before I was at the company, but then over time they got more excited. They kind of found their unique shapes that they liked individually. And as they got more and more involved in it, we heard about other guys. Now we have a whole bunch of really top kite surfing athletes who are coming back and talking to us and giving us feedback and riding different boards. Basically, Stretch. Some of these guys came directly to us, and some of them have come through our relationships with shapers. So an example of that is Pat Rawson, who is a really well-renowned shaper and surf, had actually developed one of the boards that we built with him out of Tough Light for Elliot LeBeau originally, which is the 6'2" Rawson, which is also kind of the favorite of Mauricio. So we also met guys through that. Another example of that would be Josh Mulcoy, who's been riding for Stretch for many years. We just recently came out with a TL2 model with Mulcoy that's Stretch. It's a Stretch modeled Mulcoy board built out of TL2 technology that Mulcoy rides both as his surfboard and his kite surfboard. And he's really probably one of the most recognized surfer who's really kind of shown the crossover. And it's what's really interesting is he really surfs the same board in all conditions, whether he's kite surfing or surfing. He's on his 6.0 Mulcoy model from Stretch. And between all those things, it just became really clear to us that we had all these top guys coming to us asking for boards, basically telling us, "Hey, you guys are blowing it. What are you guys waiting for? We like your stuff. The people who we talk to, we tell them about your stuff. What are you guys thinking about now? At least letting everyone else know." And so this year, between stuff like all the stuff I'm saying and realizing that there was a really big demand, as well as the fact that we developed these pads that have an insert that allow you to ride with straps, it just felt like a really great time to bring ourselves a little more into the market and get more involved.
Well, we got a couple questions coming out of the lounge, and one of them is, why do you think other surf companies have been hesitant to enter the kite surfing market?
That's an interesting one. The surf industry is really sensitive and they're really slow to kind of jump into new areas. It's in part because most of the guys and girls who work in the surf industry come from a surf background, and so kite surfing is still somewhat foreign to them. They don't know it quite as well. They don't, if you're not involved in the sport, it's easy to kind of not see how closely it aligns with surf. It really, there's so many shared aspects, and there's the same types of super active people are involved in both, but surf really, there's almost a paranoia of reaching out and entering into kind of new markets. I know recently there's been a few companies that are starting to get more involved, and I think it's really one of those things where it's kind of a snowball. As a few companies get involved and see the response, I think you're going to see more companies get excited about it.
Do you kite surf?
I do, but I'm pretty much just getting into it. At the initial stages, I'm fortunate enough to be in an area where, up by Woodell, where you can go a lot, and I'm trying to get up there as much as I can, and super stoked because all those guys are giving me have been super supportive, So I'll be up there more and more.
Well, that's good. You got to start, man, and then once you start, you just get hooked.
Yeah, I'm just trying to claim it as work time.
It is. It's R&D.
That's pretty much. I'm working on that one as much as possible.
Well, that's good to hear. Here's another question. Pro surfers typically go through a ton of boards a year, and hardcore surfers break at least a few boards in the same time period. What kind of durability can a kite surfer expect from a Surftech board, as the rigors of kite surfing put more stress on boards than normal?
Yeah, that's one of the big aspects that everyone is really appreciative about our product, is that it's far more durable than your standard poly board. And now lots of guys are doing EPS and epoxy boards, and overall at every level, products are becoming stronger and higher quality. We're pretty confident that we make one of the most durable products out there without foregoing performance. You can keep on adding weight and adding glass to a product to make it more and more durable, but obviously at some point, it's a give and take between the weight of the board and the performance of it. Our whole focus has always been, we want to make sure these boards are at the pinnacle of performance, and now once we're at that pinnacle, and now we're going to do everything to make them as strong as possible. I don't think there's a board out there that someone would claim is bulletproof and unbreakable. Boards do get damaged, but we're really confident that our boards are about as strong as anything else on the market.
Yeah, those boards are. I've seen guys just like with their harness hook just go slam into the board, and it just gets like maybe a little dent or chips the paint.
Exactly, and I know one of the big things that on the surf, and I think it's the same on anyone who's in the water, people really appreciate is that, okay, dings happen. You hit a rock, whatever it may be. It's inevitable when you're using a product a bunch that you're going to have a ding. Having a waterproof core is insane, because in the past, if you had a board that got a ding, you were out of the water as quick as you could to make sure the thing didn't suck in water, because sucking water out of foam is a process. To dry out of foam blank is just a long process. So what's really, really great is I'm definitely not recommending anyone not fix their dings when they're riding their boards, but you have some time to do it. If you're on a trip and you're riding your board and you get a ding, you don't have to suddenly stop everything to fix it. You finish off your trip and you fix it when you get home. You're not sucking in water, which is pretty detrimental aspect of surfboards in the past.
Here's another good question coming in from the lounge, and it's about the surf industry. It says, why? It says, because you work in the surf industry and for one of the largest mass manufacturers of surfboards in the surf industries, maybe you could give us your insight on why the surf industry and perhaps the surf culture gives kite surfing such little respect. It's the funny thing is it's more of those guys who don't know it. It's the guys. It's one of those things where it's changing. I think, and I'm not a historian on kind of windsurfing and surfing, but I know there was quite a
kind of a break in the dynamic between the two, where they were two different groups. There wasn't a whole lot of crossover, or at least not spoken. I think there was actually a lot more crossover than people actually talked about. I think to a certain extent, surfers the surf industry has been so focused on the sport as they see it, they're not even seeing how much crossover is already occurring. I know there's a lot of surfers on the North Shore of Hawaii who kite surf, and the funny thing is they may not talk about it. And then I know a lot of surfers who kite surf are just sitting there chuckling, going, "Yeah, I don't really want to talk about it, because if everyone knew how much fun I was having, we're gonna bring a lot more surfers into it." And I think it's going to change. I think it's more than anything, it's a lack of understanding and knowledge about the sport. I know when I've shown it to surfers or friends of mine who surf who don't really know anything about kite surfing, and they see a video, one of the current videos of some of the guys in waves, they trip out. You can see in their eyes, they're kind of going, "Whoa, what am I missing here?"
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that there are key individuals that are professional surfers and people who avidly surf and kiteboard, who found kiteboarding, and it is kind of the best kept secret. It's like I want to see the sport grow, but then again, it's kind of like sometimes you're like, man, imagine like having 500 guys trying to kite some point break. It'd just be ridiculous. So, let them keep saying whatever they say, but in the end, like you said, they'll find it, and there are more and more people. Like Mulcoy is a perfect example of a guy who has been an incredible, I hate to use the word, but ambassador for kite surfing. I mean, that guy, he'll go and paddle out on the same surfboard and come in and then go and kiteboard on it and just smack the lip so hard and so legit, and it's awesome to have that guy in the sport. He's the kind of guy that's going to draw more people in and give us the real respect that we deserve. And and then there's also, I know a lot of guys who just go camp out in Indo, and that's, what they do down there, no one even usually sees it, but they're riding world-class waves, and getting into sections and just doing stuff and getting deep in barrels that you couldn't even get into surfing. So I think that the future for kite surfing is huge, and the potential is there. So, but that's my little 2 cents.
And you're 100% right, and it is places like the crossover you're gonna see is in places like the North Shore, where guys are watching. Guys who are surfing who hang out at Sunset Beach look out at backyards when the wind comes up and everyone's come in, and they're sitting there going, "Whoa, I'm calling it over for a day," but those guys are just getting started. And it's like the same kind of thing here in Santa Cruz. We have a strong onshore flow, and if there's a lot of guys who once the wind comes up, it's just like, "Oh, what am I going to do for the rest of the day?" I don't know the story behind how Josh got involved, but I wouldn't be surprised if, he's a pretty intrepid searcher for good waves, and he travels up the coast a lot. He probably started driving by Riccitelli, seen something interesting going on, and was just, took an interest into it. It's these places where there's crossover, where guys are surfing and kite surfers are kite surfing. I think Ventura has that a lot too. It's only a matter of time that guys are going to get more into it.
And you'd even be surprised here where I live in Corpus Christi, and the Gulf Coast. Just yesterday we were out, and there was about 15 kiters out, and I'd say 8 of them were on surfboards. It's like riding Gulf slop. It's kind of amazing, actually. So, there's kiting. The one thing that kiting does, and actually Santiago Aguirre, the former owner of Reef, he said it best. He said, in places where surfing is inaccessible and you just have, miles and miles of just stuff that's unsurfable, add a kiteboard and all of a sudden it's become surfable, So, yeah, the future's bright. But here's another question for you. Surftech has over 200 different models to choose from. Are there any kite-specific boards in your product lineup, and how can kite surfers determine what board will work best for them?
Yeah, that's a complicated question for me to answer. The best thing what I tell people who ask me that question kind of when I see them is, hey, I can give you an insight as to what the guys we deal with are riding, there's such a huge crossover between what different guys are looking for in boards. I know, kind of from my perspective, the guys who are coming in from the surf side generally are looking for basically surfboards, like boards that are similar to their surfboard size. So, Molko's a perfect example. He rides a 6.0 when he surfs. He rides a 6.0 when he kites. But on the other hand, I know guys from the windsurf side who come in, or from the kite surf, like the non-wave side, who've been riding smaller twin tips, will come in and be looking for a much shorter board. So I know guys who are bigger than Molkoy who ride our 5.1 Paizel model that was developed, tiny board. And then, guys like Ben Wilson preferred JC's 6.0. Elliot LeBeau was riding the Rawson, I think I talked about before. Felix rides a 6.0 Weber. Seems like a lot of the guys who come in from the surf side or even the guys who are really involved on the wave side of kite surfing are liking boards that are, right around the bottom 6 foot range to 5.10s, and they're looking pretty much at high performance shortboards. The reason is a lot of boards in our line, we've got a lot of kind of fishier, wider shapes, shapes with more volume. The whole reason is because when waves are bad, surfers are using that width, that extra volume to generate speed. Well, that's the kind of secret luxury of kite surfing, is you're not having to use small waves to generate your speed. You got it already, so you don't need kind of all that extra volume that might be necessary for a surfer to ride the same wave. You can come in on a really high performance shortboard shape and have a blast. So that's what I'm seeing, at least. I think there's a lot of transition going on right now. I can only talk to what I see, and that's kind of a lot of guys riding those performance shortboards. And they're basically focusing on the boards that they, the way it works, because of the range of boards we have and the range of shapers we work with, a lot of these shapers have a real strong presence in select areas. Rawson's presence, for instance, is really strong in Hawaii. He's a world known as a shaper, but if you had to look at the bulk of where people really go after Rawson, he's going to have the strongest presence in Hawaii. On a different note, you might have, Rusty's based out of San Diego. You see Rusty boards all over the world, but you're going to see the most in San Diego. Same kind of applies when you see kite surfers. Stretch has people are really excited about Stretch's boards. He's obviously been much more involved in the kite surfing world, so he's been designing boards. So he's got a huge range of offerings. But I know all the guys at Waddell are hitting Molkoy up all the time to try his model. So one of the best things I always recommend is if you're looking at a board, if you're looking at getting a directional board, go to the local shop. I mean, that's, the local shops are the guys who really know what's going on. Or talk to the local rider who's a standout. Those guys are a wealth of information. They're a wealth of information for me. Every time I'm up there, I'm talking to different guys, getting their insight. They really, there's no better place, because everyone's kite surfing in different types of conditions, different wind conditions, different wave conditions, and all our boards are designed to excel in different conditions, under different types of people's feet. So it's kind of like you can find there's a bunch of boards in our line that will feel similar, and they'll all feel great. But the best thing you can do is talk to the guys who are already riding them.
Well, here's a question. It's a good one. It's what board do you ride, and do you ride strapped or do you ride strapless?
I am still riding direct. I'm still at the point where I'm not even envisioning riding strapless. I'm riding strapped. I'm riding mostly twin tips because I'm still not confident enough to really be on a directional. But when I do, which I'm kind of transitioning right now, I'm just trying out a bunch of different stuff. I don't know enough myself for my own style to figure out what board I'd be on. But yeah, so I'd have to say that I'm in the same process of learning which board is right for me.
It's funny because I was having a conversation with a really good kiteboarder last night, and he was saying that the Surftech Taj Burroughs model is the model, and I was just like, man, it'd be tough to pick a board out of. I mean, you guys have so many incredible shapers. I mean, I have a Rawson Rocketfish downstairs. You know, it's like there's so many. It's like there's so much diversity in your line that it's got to be really tough to figure out what to ride. And and you said Pivik is riding a Weber.
Yeah, he's riding a 6.0 Weber. And it's funny because to what you're saying, I've already experienced it because I've been working with some of the guys locally, and I'll bring them a board, and they'll be like, "That's the board for me. This is it. This is the one I want." And I'll be like, "All right, cool, but hey, try this one," and it'll be a different board, and then they'll be like, "Oh, wow, well, that was the one for me." So, you know, what's fortunate, the luxury of kitesurfing is that, yeah, you have all this speed, which is one of the most difficult things to obtain when you're just surfing, is generating the speed to really feel a board. I mean, that's the hardest part for a surfer, is even to get to the point at which they can truly feel kind of the unique concaves or the unique rockers of a surfboard. Kite surfers, you know, the minute you're standing, you're at a speed where you're really feeling out a board. So it's amazing. I mean, you can really tell the differences that might, you know, easily go unnoticed by surfers that make each board unique. But at the same time, I really think, hey, I guess I'm biased, but it's pretty hard if you find a template and a shape, overall shape that you like, you're going to be pretty stoked on it. I have yet to have someone just go, "Oh man, you know, that thing was too slow," or it. You know, all the shapers we go with are all designing their boards off of years of experience designing for surfers who are riding, you know, they're different ways, but they're all after the same goal of creating a board that goes fast and can turn quick when it's going fast and can hold its edge under high speeds. So, you know, I don't know if I'm only confusing the issue or helping out, but
you guys have a lot to pick from. And actually, this is a good question to segue to, is like Surftech, you just launched your summer demo tour. Tell us about this and how people can find out more info on where they can demo the product.
Yeah, well, our summer tour, we do a tech tour every summer. This one we've kind of grown it a little more to be, you know, in the past we had to kind of choose between the East and the West Coast just because we didn't have enough people. This year we actually divided it out, so we're having events on all the coasts. The whole event dates are all online on our website, surftech.com. And basically, you know, we're holding them at a bunch of areas kind of up and down the coast. We're just coming out with the pads, the strap pads. So, you know, we're probably going to be having a few of those on a few select boards, but it's almost too early for us to have a real true demo fleet of those boards all strapped up. But no, you know, definitely we're going to have, you know, it's aimed at, you know, everybody. It's surfers and kite surfers, so there's a certain amount of, you know, they start early, 7 a.m. to get it when it's not too windy, and we hold them through the first part of the day. So it's kind of, you know, check out some of the locations probably near where someone's interested in going to see if it's, you know, a good place to check them out for kite surfing.
Well, and you brought up the new pads and footstrap system with integrated insets. What prompted this development, and what went into the R&D process for this product?
What prompted it was, obviously, a lot of our riders, all the guys are riders, but the guys who were giving us feedback, some of them are riding strapless and some of them are riding strapped. You know, those guys are professionals. They do it for a living. They have a lot of time to focus on their equipment to dial it in. And they also have the know-how, or at least are connected with the people who have the know-how to put in inserts, which is a process. At one point, we were looking at, you know, which boards we wanted to choose from to put inserts in. We had actually developed one of Rawson's boards we had built with inserts as an option. But to the point we were talking about before, it was like everyone wanted something different, and there was no way we were going to be able to build all the variety of boards we wanted to build with inserts. and we really wanted to make. We really knew that a majority percentage of the kite surfing population rides strapped. So that prompted basically the development of the pad. The guy who developed our pad is our product developer, Corey, who's got a long history. Corey Davis has a long history in developing and designing products in kiteboarding and windsurfing and surfing. And so he focused in, we kind of had the vision. Our vision for our strap pad was kind of the ultimate crossover. It would allow an athlete, I'll say, surfer or kite surfer, to basically ride strapped or strapless as a kite surfer, as well as be able to use the board to paddle in. Kind of the idea being that you can go on a trip with one board and it functions for everything. So that kind of was that was what spearheaded the actual design of the system. So it's a really low profile pad. It's designed to basically be able to be as comfortable as possible when you're laying on the board, yet to be completely fit all the needs of kite surfers when they're riding it.
Well, here comes a question out of the lounge. It says, I'm really curious about your pad and strap system. I've been watching some of the rippers in Santa Cruz trading out the different Surftech models over the last month or so, but I haven't seen any of the boards being ridden with your new insert pads. When do you foresee like your team and more of these systems getting out there?
I got the first box here right by my desk.
Ah, well, there you go. That's why.
That's why. No, there's a couple guys. Literally last week, a couple guys. I had a couple of our guys who ride with and give us kind of insight. Got a couple sets, and then there's a few guys from the list I kind of talked about before who I'd sent some. Those were the guys who I'd sent them to before we went into production to get feedback from. So potentially if you're kiting in those areas in Hawaii and whatnot, you might have seen some of those guys riding with kind of our prototype versions, and it was basically off of those guys' feedback that we went into production with the pad that have available today.
Well, you know what? I have like a zillion questions from the forums, and so I apologize to those of you who I know you've posted a bunch of questions. I'm going to try and get through as many of them as I can. First one, it comes from Zero, is the guy's name. When are the new Roosh skimboards going to be available for sale, and where can I find them? And I really don't. I don't really screen these, so I don't even know if you guys do Roosh skimboards.
No, we are. We're doing Roush.
Roush.
But yeah, Roush
Sorry.
skimboards. They're coming out this summer. I believe. I'm never totally 100% clued in when everything's gone out. I think some of the models are already out in the stores. I know, because that's a whole other avenue. I know there's a interesting kind of crossover between skim and kite surfing. One of the guys who reps for us is an avid kite surfer, a guy named Eric Ekman, up in the Northwest, and he came in and was just very excited, to say the least, about one of Roush's designs, which is kind of a crossover skimboard surfboard. So I know there's that's a whole other side of some of the more unique shapes that we're doing with Roush. I mean, he's consistently creating new stuff, so those should be coming out this summer, and then you're only going to be seeing more and more of that because they're just hitting the market now.
Hey, Sonder, you're kind of fading in and out a little bit, so no worries. I know we're about 35 minutes into this thing, so I imagine I know how it goes. So just if you can, just speak straight in the phone, and that'll help. Here's another question. Is TL2 really as strong as the normal Tough Light for kite surfboards, or is there a trade-off in strength for the flex?
I get asked that question a lot. People go, well, which one's more durable? Is it Tough Light or TL2? It's not quite as black and white as that. Durability kind of shows itself in many different ways. There's durability in relation to, if you bang it into something, and there's durability in relation to, if you're putting a lot of flex on a board. Every board has everything has its breaking point. So I think they probably have different strengths in different areas. They're really, the construction is still the same in terms of the sandwich. When you're starting to look at the difference between durability, you're talking about the different high-density foams we use. You know, I haven't really tested enough, but I know that I put them both under the feet of all that technology, under a lot of people's feet. You know, Molko as an example, he got his TL2. He got obviously the first one, the one pre-production, probably about 4 months ago now, or 5 months ago now, and he's still riding it. And he trips out when he comes to talk to me. He goes, he's like, I don't know what's going on here. This should have broken a long time ago. But that's a good sign.
That is a good sign. Well, this is another guy, Live to Surf from California. He's got a bunch of questions, and I'm going to try and just kind of pick through a few so I get questions answered for everybody. Let's see. It says, one of my buddies says surfboards and kiteboards are totally different due to rocker considerations. Which would argue that most is, if not all, Surftechs are suboptimal for kiting. I mean, this one kind of, the best way to comment on it is like, I mean, some of the best kiteboarders in the world are riding these boards, and I mean, they're loving them. So I think that one kind of actually answers itself.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at it from what are the goals of both athletes. What are the goals of surfers and kite surfers? I mean, when you're talking about riding waves, it's not really that different. So there's no reason why you'd be designing why one wouldn't cross over.
And I think that's kind of part of the magic, though, too. I mean, it's like, bring a board, you can surf it, you can kite it, you know.
I mean, that's what guys are doing. They're surfing in the morning, and you know, you go on your insane trip, and you're surfing perfect waves in the morning, and when the wind turns on, you're surfing that exact same way with a lot more power. But you're trying to position yourself the same way. You're trying to do the same turns. I mean, the board itself is being utilized the same way. It's just, that's the ultimate crossover, I think.
Here's a good question. He says, why is it so hard to get certain shapes? And he basically says the stretch quad.
You know, that's funny. Stretch quads, yeah, they've been difficult to get. I think basically no one anticipated how popular quads would be. We did. We anticipated it to be really popular, but even we were off. I mean, basically those boards, you know, when we started developing those boards, Stretch got nominated as the Shaper of the Year. You know, one of his most recognized athletes to start getting a ton of coverage, and suddenly, no matter, we just weren't ready. We didn't anticipate it enough, and yeah, we're catching up though. They're all over the place. We're getting them out there for summer because we're not missing the boat. We definitely recognize that we need to catch up with those models because feedback has been really positive on quads, and his models are basically the most recognized out there.
Well, this comes from a guy named DB Kiter, instructor, and this is more about paddle boards. And he says, in my experience, roughly shaped waves with very high winds, like we have here in Northern California, demand a very short quad fin board with very little tail rocker, and is not something I would choose to paddle surf on. Do you care to comment?
No. I mean, yeah, I do. I mean, he may very well be right. I mean, that's the whole thing with, and I think it also applies a lot to guys as they get bigger. There's guys who are definitely out there who are riding boards far smaller than they'd ride if they were surfing. I think you're going to see both sides. You're going to see those guys who are crossing over riding their board that they surf on, and also riding when they kite surf. But to his point, yeah, I think for a lot of other people, they are going to want to ride smaller boards. And then it goes right back to those guys who are riding 5.1s. They're on a totally different program, and they're still riding a directional surfboard. I still think the Paizo model that we offer is really an incredible option for them, but there's no way they're going to surf on that board. They need, you're going to need to be powered by a kite if you're any bigger than 100 pounds to stand up on that thing. It's just there's so many different styles and different ways guys kite right now that it is really about finding the right board for yourself.
Well, and that kind of leads into this question, which you almost just answered. But is Surftech planning on producing boards that will work well for or only work? I'm sorry, let me repeat that. Is Surftech only planning on producing boards that work well only for paddle surfing and light air, or are you guys coming up with some actual kiteboarding specific boards?
So, the reality being is that from everyone I've talked to in every aspect that I've been involved with on the sport, it wouldn't be any different. We wouldn't be doing anything different right now if we had never developed, if we had come in purely as a kiteboarding company and never developed surfboards, the product we would be coming out to basically service the kite surfing community would be the same. I mean, we'd be developing the same templates that we are right now. It really comes down to our trust, and it's kind of been proven, is that the guys who have been shaping for the last few decades for riding waves, however you're going to ride those waves, are the ones who know best what to design, and that's who we work with. Those shapers are designing the boards that fit wave riding the best, regardless of how you power your way in or how you're powered up when you're actually riding them.
Well, and this is kind of another question, basically, on the whole kiteboard versus surfboard type of mentality. The guy's name is Sherman, and he says, I think you guys are on to something. You have a whole warehouse of shapes in production, so I would assume that a rider could find a board that fits them when they are pulling into windblown waves with a kite. The problem I see is with durability and weight. Kitesurfing is demanding, and it demands different characteristics than your surfing segment. What do you think?
I don't know. Unless I'm missing something, kite surfers are carving turns in the same manner that surfers are carving turns. I'd say the average guy on a kiteboard who is regularly carving turns at higher and faster speeds. So by that nature, sure, you're putting more stress on any board under your feet. But there's guys who are riding our boards in the heaviest, most powerful surf in the world on a regular basis, and they're holding up phenomenally. Once again, I'll put the caveat in. Guys break our boards. Don't get me wrong, it happens. But our experience is, as far as being reliable, it's far superior than some of the other options in terms of the strength of the boards. And that's the feedback we've gotten from all the kiteboarders as well. They last a lot longer.
Well, and this question comes from Top Hat, and Top Hat's definitely a hardcore wave rider. Hangs out with Pivot all the time. He wants to know, there are many epoxy surfboards on the market now. How does Surftech set itself apart from the rest of the ever-emerging epoxy surfboard market?
It comes down to the two major things, which is, first and foremost, in any board, any board you buy for any kite surfing or surfing, it's the shape. We pride ourselves on only working with the best shapers, so right off the bat, we figured, honestly, we have the best shapes on the market, hands down. The second part is the construction. There's a lot of epoxy boards out there, and there's some great stuff out there. The focus of this company from the very beginning was to build some of the best surfboards anyone's ever seen, and that included making sure that the materials and the construction method was as good as we could figure out, and that's what we're going forward with. Hands down, I think the way we construct our board is very different when you start looking, especially at the way we wrap our rails with the sandwich. Obviously, we use only the best quality materials in the category. I think that between all those components, we really do set ourselves apart. I don't really think there's anyone else out there who's building boards the way we do.
Well, and here comes another question, Monkey Air, and I don't mean to be redundant, but I just want to ask all these guys questions. But his is kiters in surf do end up getting some air on their larger surf-style boards, and like windsurfing, these boards should be able to take it with a thicker rail. Any chance of making a heavy-duty version of the kite wave sailing market?
A heavier duty, is that like a heavier board?
I guess he's asking that for, will you guys be making like a thicker, more heavy duty board that I guess will be more kite specific?
I think it goes back the same way. I mean, we have we have models that are far thicker in terms of, there's a lot more foam under your feet in our line already. The construction in terms of how much glass we put on, we kind of look at how we've done it and think it's optimal for the performance of each board. So probably I don't think we'd ever go with a heavier layup. I mean, our boards are, we want to make sure they're light. I mean, that's when you start getting heavier boards, you're really giving up performance. And that's kind of the performance is the number one thing that we're focused on, ensuring at all times. We're really not, I don't think we'd go anywhere that would potentially forego that.
Well, there's a variety of questions here that are on that same note. So to any of you who've asked questions like that, just like Saunders said, they have a variety of boards from a variety of different shapers, all kinds of different rock. There's just a lot of different shapes. So check out the lineup, see what they have. Hopefully you can maybe see a board in person and try one out and see if it works for you. I mean, that's the best feedback we can provide. But here's a question. It's from Live to Surf in California. He says, I wish all your shapes had volume attributes reported. Why is reporting of this data so spotty?
Actually, we're working on it. I think most of our boards now have volume showing in on our website. It's 90%, I think, have it. The ones we're missing, we're working on getting them there. I mean, if for guys who've looked at our site, we continue to work and improve upon it as far as information goes, from the descriptions of the boards to stuff like the volume. And it's like any website, it's a work in progress. I hands down would be the first to admit that I need to start providing a lot more specific content to better explain, the different attributes of our boards to kite surfers, to let them know, to help. I mean, I know it's going to be kind of almost daunting when you see the amount of boards we have, to really help guide as much as possible people down the right road when they're looking for boards. But to the one thing you had mentioned before, the other thing that I think a lot of people have never taken advantage of is, at least on the coastal areas in California and on the East Coast, there's quite a few shops that offer the opportunity to demo boards through the shop. We actually list them in a website, and you can go to that shop and try out a board. Unfortunately, they don't come strapped because they're also focused on demoing those boards to surfers. But, I think depending obviously on if you ever go ride unstrapped or strapped, that's an opportunity to get some experience on a board. As one option. But my experience, to be honest, at least in the areas that I've been, is kite surfers are really generous. I mean, the guys are really generous. If you're on a twin tip board and you're out there at the beaches and you're kind of showing up and giving it a go and you're talking to the guys, I see it all the time. Hey, try this board out. Hey, try my board out. Give it a go. Check it out. Give me your feedback. That's so unusual. I mean, you never see that in the surf world. You never see guys lending each other boards, but I've really seen that all the time at least up at Waddell. Guys are just really psyched on kind of helping people, helping pave the path for newer guys to the sport, as well as just trying out each other's stuff to learn more about it.
No, you're absolutely right. Unless it's firing, then you're just stuck on the beach. No, I'm just kidding.
Well.
Here's one last question out of the lounge. He says, I've seen 2 different Surftech boards, each with a fin ripped out of it, and I think they were both FCS-style boxes. Can we choose the type of fin boxes to pair up with the board we want, and are certain fin boxes more durable?
Basically, all our boards come with FCS or future fins. You can't choose. The way we do it is the shaper decides, because we're always focused on ensuring that we're staying in line with everything the shaper is doing. We basically they tell us whether they want to do future FCS, and that goes. There's a whole variety of reasons why a shaper would choose one or the other. I know a lot of times on the boards that are attributed to a certain rider, for instance, an example would be Molkoi's stretch model. I don't even know exactly what fin system it has in that, but if Molkoi rides for a certain company, they're going to have that, there's a whole partnership on all levels there. But knowing that pretty much if you find a board in the line that you really like and you want one fin system over the other, I can almost guarantee that you can find almost a very, very similar board that has the opposite fin system. As far as the strength of the two, I wouldn't be fair for me to even talk to it because I've never really done testing on fin systems.
Well, and no, it's all good.
And just to add to that, the way those boxes are designed, as well as the way they're put in and the way the company designed them, is the fin is supposed to give before the fin box. It doesn't always happen. I think it has a lot to do with perhaps where the pressure was applied on the fins. But that's the aspiration on all parties' part, is if something's going to go, the fin will snap at the tabs rather than the actual box, because fins are relatively easy to replace.
Well, you know what? We're hitting our time, and it's a great conversation, a lot of good information, and the really valuable resources. You guys look onto the surftech.com website for demos. Why not take advantage of that? But I want to give you a chance to tell us exactly where your website's at and where we can go to find more information about all your boards.
Yeah, our website is just surftech.com. Navigate through it. There's an incredible amount of information, both in terms of individual boards and as well as the construction of our boards. It's a pretty valuable resource. As I said before, I think that's a great place to start to look for boards. I think going into individual shops and talking to riders is also a phenomenal way. And I think between all that, I think you can really quickly dial in great boards for yourself. I think that's kind of that's our aspiration, and I know we're going to be working hard over the next few months to provide and add content to our site to make the ability to find the right board for everyone easier. I don't want to open myself up to too much stuff, but I'd love if there's someone who has some insight, if there's people who have insight as to ways to really improve the site in terms of finding ways to improve the site for people looking for boards. I'm always open to it. I think you can hit it up at info@surftech.com. Just say something relevant in the header about benefits to the kiteboard aspect of the site. I'd love to hear better ways to educate everyone about our product.
Well, hey man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about all this. And one quick question, just for me, and probably help you guys out too. Are you going to have some information, or do you have information on your new straps and pads setup?
Yeah. There's a bunch of information on the site. Actually, it's on the front page right now. We're pretty excited about that product or that pad, and we have a bunch of information. As I said, we're probably going to be adding more information about it, and hopefully, once again, we're going to be probably adding some more elements of marketing behind it, some pictures and some videos of guys using it. But no, it's right there front and center, because that's definitely something we're really excited about.
Well, awesome. Well, hopefully we'll get you back on the show here in the upcoming year, and we'll talk about more new, cool product from you. So, hey, man, have a great night, and we'll talk to you later.
Hey, yeah, stoked. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be on here. I had a good time.
No problem. Tomorrow, this will be, we'll post it up tonight, and tomorrow it'll be go out to the whole world. So, check back with me. I can tell you how many times it's been downloaded.
Insane.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye-bye. Well, everyone, that concludes podcast number 80. Sonder is obviously from Surftech. Great podcast tonight. Ton of good information. Surftech, they have some renowned shapers that make boards for the company. Top top quality company, top shelf boards. I know that a lot of the top wave riders in the world ride those boards. They do a good job. So anyway, check them out, www.surftech.com. And also just want to say thanks for tuning into the show. Been getting a lot of great feedback. This podcast was actually came from one of the pro riders who hooked us up with him. Said you need to get this guy on the show, and we were just all for it. So again, please channel all your ideas and to us, because we'll make them happen. And then to all the people who posted questions, thanks a lot. I know I missed some of them. I tried to get them all in there, but I knew we were coming up short on time. Please continue to post your questions, and I'll make sure to get them answered. And last bit of info, the Kiteboarder magazine actually will be hitting the shelves probably either by tomorrow or on Monday, Tuesday. So be sure to check it out. Billy Parker's on the cover, and it's pretty cool. The magazine's got all kinds of great information, lots of gear reviews and stuff in there. So check it out, www.thekiteboarder.com. I'll talk to you later, and thanks for tuning in.